Well, it's July and I'm back. I know the month of June just got past me. I did 21 days on the road in June. The world has opened back up again, at least the part of the world called the United States. And for those of us who were doing everything virtually, we actually got out of this little square and we were in planes and trains and automobiles. And I was finding myself with a question I used to ask myself, like, is the bathroom to the left or to the right when I wake up in the middle of the night? I couldn't remember in the old days. Well, I didn't have any problems with that in the year and a half I stayed at home. I kind of figured that out. Anyway, speaking of figuring things out, my entire career is thanks to this gentleman. I mean, sincerely, I at the time I'd been working in healthcare and organizational development, and I've been working, a lot with the idea of customer service and how to make sure every single service transaction was the same. And then this genius, along with a fellow genius, James Gilmour, and my guest today, Joe Pine, put together a book in 1999 that rocked my world, rocked the world, I think, for pretty much everyone. It changed the entire way we saw economic value. And all that service stuff, that consistency of service stuff, that was so yesterday. And they were speaking to what was really driving consumers. And because I came to know him in 1999 through that book, I mean, I only knew him through the book, to be quite honest with you. We had no personal relationship going there. But for as far as I was concerned, he was like my best friend. I then went back and read his book from 1993 called Mass Customization. I've been attentive to a book that was really a series of articles in 2000 called Market of One. We'll talk some about 2007 and his book Authenticity. We'll take you through 2011 when he did Infinite Possibility, this time kind of going it with Kim Korn. And then we'll talk about the re-release, which is kind of interesting to me because he talks about re's and uns back in the days of finding authenticity, I think. But the re-release of the Experience Economy in 2020, he is no other than the transformationalist in the field of customer experience, Joe Pine. How was that for an introduction? I didn't have time for the interview because I had.
That is a wonderful introduction. It was very gratifying to hear.
I was so excited. Now I even knocked my headphones out talking to you. It's like I'm way out of control here. All right, so let's talk about this little journey of yours. I mean, I don't know that I know how you got to writing Mass Customization and where you were in your career when you decided you were going to start publishing your thought leadership. So can we take it back that far?
Sure. And so you go back that far. I worked for IBM, and I worked in competitive analysis and performance analysis, and I worked up into a strategy job where I realized that every customer that we had was in fact unique, and they wanted the mini computers that we produced to do different things, and we just really didn't take that into account when we developed this new system called the AS400 in the late 1980s. And so I went and searched for how do we solve that problem. I came across Stan Davis's book, Future Perfect. And for me, that's, I think of Stan the way you think of me, evidently, is that it was like the heavens opened up, the angels sang. When I read his book, particularly his chapter on mass customizing, right? Mass customizing is efficiently serving customers uniquely. So I worked to get that into our plans and strategies at IBM. And then they sent me to MIT for a year to get my master's degree. Found out I had to do a thesis. I said, boom, I'm going to do a thesis on mass customization, and I'm going to turn it into a book, right? That was my whole goal.
No idea that it was, this book was just a thesis in disguise. Yes.
So the first 4 chapters and the appendix are my thesis. And then the rest of it I expanded when I got back to IBM. And I was able to get a contract with Harvard Business School Press to be able to publish it. So it came out actually in late 1992. And a quick little story is I can remember I finally got to meet Stan Davis. He wrote the foreword of the book. Harvard arranged that. I was in Boston. We had dinner together. At the end of dinner, he takes out this little piece of paper and writes a note on it. And he folds it over and he slides it across the table. And I said, what's this? He said, well, it's my prediction for you. I said, well, you want to open it now or later? And he said, whatever you want. So I opened it then, and it said, you will leave IBM within a year. And I said, no way. I love IBM. Look at the opportunities that they gave me and all of this sort of stuff. And then 6 months later, I called them up and said, you were right. And ever since then, it's been a matter of working with my partner, Jim Gilmore, and others to be able to figure out what's going on in the world of business, and then develop frameworks that describe what's happening and then prescribe what companies can do about it.
It seems like it's that moment in one's life where you have to say, I love what I do, but I think there could be a bigger platform for me. And am I willing to gamble on myself, right? Like the gig at IBM was a pretty much guaranteed long-term career phenomena. But now all of a sudden you're going to have to go out there and prove your worth, not only through mass customization, which was considered, I think, one of the best books in 1993. I don't know where I was in 1993, but it was actually later reviewed and considered as such. But you did take that risk. And how did you find James Gilmour? Because the two of you think in very powerful ways. I've read some of his independent work as well.
Yeah, I'll mention, it's been 28 years this week, actually, that I left IBM, and my wife's still not sure it's going to work out, but so far, so good. But Jim, in fact, sent me a letter. Email almost came out of my mouth, but no, he sent me a letter in the mail with a videotape around March, April of 93, after the book came out. And he said he read it and he found it on a bookstore shelf in Cleveland, Ohio. And he said that his reaction was, oh, shoot, somebody else has already written it. Because he was thinking along the same lines and wanted to write a book on it. So he contacted me, sent me a videotape of him talking about mass customization. And then once I left, I said, I need clients. Who was that guy in Cleveland who sent me that videotape? And we connected, and he worked for Cleveland Consulting Associates that eventually became part of CSC. And so he hired me, and we worked together, and eventually we figured out, hey, let's go out on our own. Particularly after I shared my ideas on what I always say, discovering. I didn't invent it. I discovered the experience economy, and I shared it with Jim. He loved that, and so with that basis, we went out and created the firm Strategic Horizons LLP in early 1996. So we actually celebrated our 25th anniversary earlier this year.
So forgive me for, oops, I got my head in the experience economy. That's what you really should forgive. This is how much the experience economy has affected me. I'm nothing except a charlatan behind the experience economy. All right. So, I was going to say, forgive me for putting up the more modern version of the book cover. This book cover has had so many variations. I've seen ticket stubs on the front cover. I mean, there's all kinds of variations, but I will get myself out of the picture so I can duly show the experience economy. This is the book that did it for me, right? I started consulting for Starbucks, which was really interesting, and then did my first book on behalf of Starbucks in 2006. So I had previously done a book on the Pike Place Fish Market, which I think, thank you very much for that, by the way, a little gratuitous. Actually, I act like you're doing it for me. You're the one who wrote about it in the experience economy. But I was working at the Pike Place Fish Market with Johnny Yokoyama prior to doing that, and wrote a book about him. And it's interesting because Howard Schultz says that the fish market, the throwing of fish over at the Pike Place Fish Market, was partly influential in his thinking about experience economies. And it's funny to me how these things all kind of coalesce. But when I read your book, I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And then later in my life, I find myself working for one of the brands that you really make a point about. Like, coffee is the ultimate in evolution from a prior generation of raw material based economies to produced economies to experiential economies. Will you indulge me in that storytelling for a moment?
It's one of my favorite stories. It perfectly exemplifies this progression of economic value that we talk about as the core framework in the book. Because coffee at its core is commodities. It's beans that you grow in the ground and then extract out of the ground and sell it on the open marketplace. And if you look up the future price of coffee and convert it from a per pound to a per cup basis, coffee costs 2 or 3 cents per cup when you treat it as a commodity. But you take those beans and you roast them, you grind them, you package them, and put them on a grocery store shelf, and now you get 5, 10, 15 cents per cup of coffee, an order of magnitude more. Then if you perform the service of actually brewing it for a customer in a vending machine, a kiosk, a corner diner, a bodega, or 7-Eleven somewhere, now you get 50 cents, $1, $1.50, $2 per cup of coffee. But you surround the brewing of that coffee with the ambiance and theater of a Starbucks, and now how much you paying? It's $3, $4, $5. So you have one industry with 4 distinct levels of value, all dependent on what business do you think you're in. And Joe, I'm hoping you can verify something for me. And given
Sure.
that experience,
that's what I'm here for. Is I'm all here for you.
So we talk about Starbucks as opens the book, right? Starbucks and that coffee progression. In the theater chapter 6, we talk about the Pike Place Fish Market, which is like the most wonderful theater. And I say, if you can do it with fish, right? You can do it a commodity, then you can do it with anything. And when you go to the original Pike Place Starbucks, right, just down the road from the fish market, one of the things they did when they converted that, because originally Starbucks was a manufacturer, right? People forget that. It didn't bloom out of Howard Schultz. It was originally a manufacturer, and then they saw the possibilities Howard Schultz did in coffee drinking experiences. So in that original one, you go there, and I haven't been there in a while, but I assume it's still the case. You'd have you go in, the order counter is on the right. They'd make it in the back left, and they would throw after they write in the cup, they throw the cup over. And I always thought that has to be an homage to the fish market, right?
It is absolutely. It's totally, completely, 100% the case.
Yes.
Functionally, it was necessary in a way because it wasn't a good workflow in that building, given its retrofit. But absolutely, that's where that comes from. And it's a wonderful that whole area is just like a dynamic place for retail safaris, right? If you wanted to look at experience.
Yeah, I call them experience expeditions, but often take places. And when you go to Seattle, you got to go to Pike Place Fish Market. You got to go to the REI, the #1 tourist destination, Seattle, a retail store. And
we digress. Let's get on to your thought leadership. As much as I'd like to talk about Starbucks and Pike Place Fish Market, this evolution of your thinking, and I think most people know that it was a Harvard Business Review article. I think probably even drew more attention to it. It's one of those Harvard Business Review articles I keep in a folder just to humble myself and remind myself. It's kind of the easy way to get the primer. Yeah, it's always there for you. But then I got to tell you, Markets of One grabbed me, but not as much as authenticity. Authenticity for me, when I ran into that book, I thought it was the counterbalance. A lot of people, when they got into staging experiences, got into inauthenticity around the mindset, right? Like if I could do a show without any authentic soul in it, it was going to be staging the experience economy. So I thought this book could not have been more powerfully timely, and it caused us to think a lot about, when do you say you're authentic? When do you prove you're authentic? What do you do if you have things that are inauthentic about your experience delivery? So can you just jump us ahead now? I'm jumping 8 years maybe ahead to authenticity?
Right. Well, so authenticity is really a reaction to the fact that whenever we talk about the experience economy, people naturally bring up issues of authenticity. In particular, I remember I became a visiting professor at the University of Amsterdam. I was going to the Netherlands all the time, and I talked to Netherlands Dutch audiences. The Q&A always had one question that was really more of an accusation, and it was, you Americans, you like your plastic, your fantasy, your Disneyland environments, and we Dutch, we like our real or original, our authentic experiences. And this happens so often. As I did more investigation, I've sort of developed a practice response to it. But I would point out that it's one is that no experiences are inauthentic, right? As long as the people are authentic, because the experience happens inside of us, right? And if we perceive those experiences authentic, then they're authentic. And I said it's always interesting to get this question from the Dutch, because the Netherlands is every bit as manufactured as Disneyland is. I mean, most all the country has been reclaimed from the sea, and everything has been moved, modified, and manicured to look as if it's always been there. It's the only place I've ever gone for a walk in the woods, and all the trees are lined up in rows, right? That's what the Netherlands is like. But still, there's this craving for authenticity. And we see that the world over. And so we wrote the book to talk about what does it mean to be able to create authentic offerings. And one of the things we discovered is you can't. You can't create authentic offerings. If you look what philosophers say about authenticity, it's that we call it the 3M model, that something is inauthentic, because they generally don't define authenticity. Philosophers only define inauthenticity and said, don't do that or don't be that. But it's inauthentic if it's of man, of machine and of money, right? Of man, meaning of society, done under societal rules, where all corporations are done under societal rules and so forth. Of machine, with the height of technology today, machines are dehumanizing, and you can't make any offering, sell any offering, distribute any offering without machinery involved. And then of money, right? We all have that phrase of selling out, when you do something just for money. Well, that's what businesses are in business for, is to make money by selling offerings to people. But nonetheless, even though the offerings themselves are inauthentic, ontologically, to use a big philosophical word, phenomenologically, we can perceive them as authentic. So it's managing that perception of authenticity. And we talk about various different ways to do that, from 5 different genres of authenticity to our real fake matrix to placemaking and so on.
Yeah, this book was a bit heady. I mean, I say that in a loving kind of way, but it caused me to realize that what we think of as authentic may not be. I started to go around looking at like restaurants that would say authentic Mexican food, and I would go, well, I hope so. I mean, like, but like, what else was it? And then if it's not authentic, I mean, it really did create a kind of existential issue for me about like, what is it really? What is real? I don't know. I don't want to get too heavy into that, but the book was powerful in terms of what you needed to do to right-size yourself.
And the first thing to do is don't call yourself authentic. Because people immediately question, why do you have to say that it's authentic Mexican food or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the authenticity should be in the intention and the commitment and the activation, right? It's less about the articulation of who you are. And I think it's also about the way we serve people, right? I mean, it is an intention to be authentically of value. There's something in there about that. Let me go to where you went from there. So you really started to think more, I believe, about the digital applications of everything, and you were ahead of the power curve. I'm trying to remember when you did, your next book, but it's probably around 2007-ish.
Well, authenticity was 2007.
Okay.
Infinite possibility was 2011.
11. Okay, that was where I was going. All right, so let me pop my head out of here so that we can see that book up on your platform here. How is it that you and Kim Korn got together? I mean, were you being disloyal to James Gilmour? What's going on? Can you just fess out the facts here?
I was being authentic to Jim. So one of the big questions also, in addition to authenticity, was, okay, what about digital technology, right? We came out when the World Wide Web was originally in its infancy and so forth. And we really didn't talk much about it at all in the original book, which we also, by the way, updated The Experience Economy in 2011. So there's an updated edition that we did. And sort of simultaneous with that, I thought that we really need to figure out how you create digital experiences, or ideally experiences that fuse the real and the virtual. Authenticity was about real versus fake. Infinite possibilities about real and virtual. How do you fuse them by using them both at the same time? And I developed a framework that sort of describes how it is. It's overly complex the way I presented it, but I did of course show it to Jim and everything. But it turned out that Jim's basically a neo-Luddite. He does not a really big technology fan in any way, shape, or form. So there's no way I could write this book with him. I barely got him to write the forward to it just for fun. And Kim Korn is a great guy. Lives here in Minnesota near me. We became friends after I originally he worked for Anderson Windows, which was a big proponent of mass customization. And got to know him through working and doing a case study on them. And I was helping him with his ideas on how companies can thrive forever, which is still a book yet to be written. And then he began helping me on mine, to the point where it just became obvious that, hey, you need some credit for all of the help in figuring this out. And so Kim Korn is a co-author of the book.
And I knew Kim Korn through his association with Anderson, because I actually have been a consultant for Renewal by Anderson, the kind of renovation division of Anderson Windows. Actually, they were so kind to me. In 2019, I was their there was their vendor of the year or partner of the year, whatever they call it. And I'm kind of like a small potato, you know, I mean, like they have Salesforce and Medallia and all those kind of people.
But you are the Joe Michelli experience.
That's right. And that's thanks to the experience economy by Joe Pine. But you don't get a percentage of my income, just in case you think that you have some claim to that. You probably authentically do, but we won't go there. Let's, the beauty of this was, again, I think if you watch your career unfold, for me, the moment of incredible genius was the definition of the experience economy. So much so that I start calling you an economist, which is probably offensive at some level. But I mean, I think your insights on what are economic drivers are greater than most economists that I ever had run into. But you kept iterating on it, right? Like, there is a problem with experience if it's inauthentic. So we now address the authenticity issue. But it's limited to say experiences have to all be staged in a real world, face-to-face brick and mortar. So now we do, this infinite possibility sort of opportunity. So, and then there was the redoing in 2011 of the experience economy and again in 2020. So let's talk a little about the 2020 version of the book, and what's the, why should people go out and buy it again if they bought it in 1999 already?
Well, I know a number of people that read it every year. They've read it more than I have, and so so it will reward further readings. But the main thing we added in the 2020 version is a new preview that puts it in the context of today, particularly talking about it as the subtitle test that every company in the world is competing against every other company in the world for the time, attention, and money of individual customers. And time is limited. We can only experience things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we got to fit sleep in there sometime. And if somebody does capture my time and I'm spending it with them in some experience that they've created, well, then what I'm not doing is I'm not spending that with you. And attention is scarce. In today's media fragmented world, everybody's trying to capture eyeballs. It's incredibly scarce to capture people's attention. But if they do grab my attention, then what am I not doing is, again, I'm not spending that attention with you. And finally, money is consumable. If I have $1 to spend and I spend it with some other company in some other industry and some other geographic area, what can I do with that dollar again is I can't spend it with you. So it does point to the fact that you need to stage experiences that are engaging in order to capture people's time, attention, and money. And we introduced a few new exemplars in there. Actually, only 2 exemplars in that new preview. We think these are like our favorite ones in the world, and some new frameworks, including what I like the money value of time, which is a measurement of how.
And I love that. I think you talk about time as currency. Again, all the more reason to claim you're an economist. I mean, but I think that's a brilliant thing, and with my clients a lot. When we're talking with consultative functions, trying to get that across is so critical, right? I mean, if I'm going to invest my time with you, Joe, I want a story to tell on the backside of it. I want to make it shareable. I mean, it's really an interesting concept.
Yeah. And Jim actually does have an economics degree, but I'm an amateur economist. But it's basically just seeing what's going on in the world, and the fact that measuring time is so important today, because what experiences really are is time well spent. Right. You talked earlier, Joe, about your original work in customer service, and services are about time well saved. Right. And you get very good at that. But experiences are time well spent. The people actually value the time that they spend with you. So how do you create a time-worthy experiences? And what we do in the new preview also is we put the rest of the book in context of saying you need 5 elements. That you need to stage experiences that are robust, cohesive, personal, dramatic, and even transformative. And when you do that, you will be able to outcompete all the others and get people to spend their time with you, give you their attention, and then pay up by spending their money as a result.
We have all these people jumping in, talking to me, wishing me back, or, there's so many Joes on here. I'm not sure who they're talking about anymore, but here's a Joe, yet another Joe, just because we don't have enough of them here. Joe, and I think he's talking about you, obviously, is hitting a key chord to relationships as authenticity in conversation either drives it forward or slows it down. So kind of relationships are a function of authenticity, and that people can perceive what is genuine, and if you can help them. What's your reaction to the role of authenticity in relationship building and our ability to sense, like at an innate level,
Right.
the authenticity around us.
Well, it's you think about personal relationships, right? You need to be authentic in personal relationships, because eventually the people you relate to are going to sniff it out and realize that you're not and avoid you. And it's like, I said earlier about the first axiom of authenticity is if you are authentic, you don't have to say you're authentic, right? Because imagine the first time we meet, Joe, and I reach out to shake your hand and I say, I just want you to know that I'm incredibly authentic as a human being. You're really going to go like this and slowly back away, holding your wallet as you go. But companies do that all the time. So don't proclaim it, right? You need to be it in order to form those relationships. Now, I'll mention this. One of the things I hate about loyalty programs, right? Because they're so inauthentic, like because they're bribery. Right? It's not about true loyalty. True loyalty is when I stay with you even when you screw me over, right? That's true loyalty. True loyalty is not when I stay with you because you have these little breadcrumbs that you give me that allow me to get what I'm already buying for you for free, right? That's just a ridiculous thing to do. And what I always
I've got a quick little story, because I completely agree, and I counsel in the same way. But I remember talking to Howard Schultz early on, and I said, why don't you have a loyalty program? Like a long time ago. And he said, because why would I want to dilute the value of my product?
Exactly.
1/13th, right? And so then he goes and puts out one of the most robust loyalty programs in the world in terms of, I don't know that it's loyalty. It's kind of a reward for continual consumership, but it's not necessarily loyalty. I think it is an emotional variable. So anyway, but I just think it's kind of funny that at one point in time, he's lecturing me on the impact of loyalty programs. And then lo and behold, they have a very profoundly cool one now. So anyway.
Yeah, but it's still bribery. What I encourage companies to do is turn your loyalty programs into experience platforms where people.
Well, that's exactly where we're going to go next. So thanks for the transition, Joe Pine.
All right.
So because you've been doing immense amounts of work on experience platforms. So let's explain what that is and what your work has been of late.
Sure. Here I've been doing this multi-client study with Peter Evans of the Platform Strategy Institute, basically combining all the work that's been done on platforms, where commodities have always been sold on platforms. Goods began with eBay and Amazon, where you go to a digital place. You can think of a shopping center as a physical platform for goods as well. And services with Uber and Lyft and Fiverr and TaskRabbit and all of those are all platforms. But then we, over the last 20 years or so, and accelerating greatly, is we've now have experience platforms that you can go to Virgin Experience Days, for example, and book some exotic adventure that you want to have and gift it to a friend or give it to yourself. Airbnb, which started as renting a couch. Well, you don't have to rent just a couch or just a room or even an entire place. I know you've worked a lot with Airbnb, Joe. But then they'll sell you the experiences that you can have locally while you're there. And of course, virtually during the pandemic with Airbnb experiences. And then Amazon got into it with Amazon Explore, as well as Amazon Prime and Live are all experience platforms as well. So there's just this explosion of experience platforms. And one of the things to get back to it is that loyalty programs really should be experience platforms, right? That's what the airlines are going to. Delta, hotels like Marriott, MasterCard, their Priceless Cities platform. It's not just here's something we already give you for free. Here's something you may not even known you want. Here's an experience that you can have, and let's use our points to reward you with something that is not directly what we are giving you. And it no longer commoditizes yourself, as I think loyalty programs do, but then opens up these vistas and engages people in experiences.
Well, I'm going to make an incredible observation. Both you and I have a little gray in our hair. And with that, I think, we may not have the same level of hunger for experiences it seems like my kids do. And like my kids, if you wave like a free tchotchke to them, he's like, no, I'd rather have something that's unique to me, that's exclusive, that opens my world and discovery. It's fascinating to me to see that maybe a whole generation of people this is designed for are really attracted to experiences at a level that as much as you and I are, I'm just saying they may have another gear.
Yeah. All generations value experiences, and they value experiences over goods, and they prefer experiences over goods, and research shows it makes them happier than buying goods. But what you see is those generations that have born since the 1990s are basically grew up in the experience economy, grew up where they could revolve the world around themselves with their phone and drop into these virtual experiences at any moment. And so you'll see that there's much more of that thirst for experiences as opposed to just accumulating stuff, as it was sort of the thing to do for my generation and generations before.
And then we have to hire someplace to put all our stuff as we get older.
Right. Well, think of the rise of storage units, right? It's
Exactly.
unbelievable.
Exactly. It seems like there's something wrong in the design of that. All right. So here's where I'd like to go. I mean, we could go on and on about this stuff. I know some of the future forward thinking you're doing is in the area of transformation. So let's talk a little bit about how do you go from experiences to transformation, and kind of what's the source material for your work on transformation?
Well, yeah, the source is always asking what's next. And we did that with the experience economy, even way back when in the 90s, asking, okay, what's next? Is there something after experiences, right? If experiences are a distinct economic offering, what could be next? And recognizing that experiences can be commoditized, just like goods and services can. Been there, done that. That's the hallmark of a commoditized experience. And then customization is the antidote to commoditization. The customization lifts you up and differentiates you. So the question is, what does customization turn an experience into? What if you design an experience that's so appropriate for a particular person or company for that matter, then it can't help but become a life transforming experience, as we use the term, an experience that changes us in some way, a transformative experience. And that we call a transformation. A transformation is the fifth and final economic offering in this progression of economic value. We're using experiences as a raw material to guide people to change. And we do talk about it in chapter 9 of the experience economy, but we're continuing to do new research and write new articles on it because it's really hot on the heels of the experience economy today. And not in small measure because of the corona crisis, because of the pandemic we have, where we realized even more that it's not the stuff we buy that makes us as happy, that gives life meaning in particular. It's the experience that we have and that we're missing out on, with our family, with our loved ones, with our friends and community. And so that,
but here's the pushback I get. Like a lot of things that have happened in 2020, people are saying, well, that's really not going to stick around, right? Like they're transformatively interested for a period of time, but they're going to get pulled back into the mire of materialism, excessive work, non-human interactions.
Well, the yes and no. There will certainly be some things. Like one of the things we obviously see is that there's tremendous pent-up demand for experiences, physical experiences. But guess what? Digital experiences aren't going away. They really ramped up to a level. The fact that we can now have contactless delivery and buy our groceries online and all that taught people how to do that. Guess what? Yes, some will go back, but then more will. Here's an economist saying for you, which is that all change happens on the margin. Right. It's not that everything goes back. It's not that everything stays the same, but at the margin of where those meet is where you have this shift. We have more and more people shifting. And it absolutely, one of the things is that we recognize that we value the meaning that we have in our lives. And that forces us to have not just memorable experiences, but meaningful experiences. And those often become transformative experiences,
So, you talk about people reading your book over and over again, and I've read it more than once, to be quite honest with you. And it's not because I didn't get it. It's just that I get so much more out of every time I read The Experience Economy. But a book I read every couple of years is A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I think for me, it's that constant search for meaning in that case, in the most, abject of horrors. Right. But that there was still the capacity for humans to seek out meaning, and that meaning was what sustains us. So to me, to know that Joe Pine is working on the junction between meaning and transformation is just making me go, okay, so when's the book, The Transformation Economy, coming out?
Well, I finally just actually in the last month realized, okay, maybe now is the time to start working on that. I'm working on an article on it And then it provides the basis for thinking about a full book on it that does incorporate the concept of meaning. Because basically, I think of meaning to transformations as authenticity is to experiences. It's really the consumer sensibility. It's what you are looking for when you buy these things, and increasingly people want to seek out meaning through what they buy, and that increasingly means it's they're looking for that transformation.
All right, so I timed this out so well that right now is the exact moment that I want to be pivoting from talking about where you're going to be going and getting us all excited and lathered up about what we can look forward to from you, and kind of major high-profile articles on the topic of meaning and transformation, and then hopefully a book in the not too far distant future. But I'd like to talk about what you're offering right now. I learned terms from you, like offerings. I should use that term more, but that's what you've got, several major offerings. And I have, I know people who've gone through your expert experience economy expert certification course, and it has been life-changing in terms of their ability to transform experiences of value to the consumers or the organizations that they serve. So let's talk a little bit about that certification, that course, and let's also talk about your other offering, which is a virtual version called On Stage. So let's go there for a moment.
All right. Yeah. So in addition to the speaking, teaching, consulting, and workshops that you do as well, we do have this full week course, Experience Economy Expert Certification, that takes you through the book, that walks you through the book, gives you all the examples that we use, that most of which aren't in the book, lets you internalize the framework so that you can then apply them to your own business or to your client's business if you're a consultant of some sort. And because of last year, we started offering it virtually. So we've got a virtual course that we're going to do in August. And then the full physical course we're going to do in December in Atlanta, as well as we do private courses for individual companies as well. We have over 300 certified experience economy experts in the world today. And to a person, Joe, they say what you did, which is it really changed how they saw the world and how they did their business.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a lightweight investment. You really have to be willing to spend your time. I mean, I'm not talking on the economic side of the investment. This is really about investing yourself immersively into something and being able to create those immersive experiences for others as well. So, but please go to the website, because the cool thing about their website, Strategic Horizons, is you're not only going to hear about this offering or the On Stage offering, which I want to make sure I really do talk about a little bit more, but you're going to see the books, you're going to watch the career arc. There's a lot of other resources. If you want to get a hold of Joe for the purposes of having him come to your organization, either consultatively or in a speaking sense, which is like, drinking from a fire hose, then please stop by Strategic Horizons. I absolutely recommend it. I think it's a necessary part of anybody who cares enough to watch this thing. If you've ever read anything I've written, you got to go to these guys. So, all right. So let's talk about On Stage and what people can expect from that.
Right. So On Stage, sort of goes in the opposite direction. It's for frontline personnel. It's so that anybody in any company can watch this set of videos, right? So it's a video training offering, and be able to understand that, hey, that they can create an experience with every interaction they have with customers, that they are on stage, that their work is theater. And it takes you through how to understand that even if your company isn't focused on experiences, you as an individual can be. And if your company is focused on experiences, you can then amplify that by being able to be a full participant in making that experience happen with each individual interaction that you have with customers. We even have single person companies that use it for individual professionals and how they interact. But any business can take advantage of it. And you can find it on our website as On Stage Training.
I can tell you, it's the kind of practical advice you're going to get. It's going to be amazing. I've watched their work, Gilmore and Pine's work, really shape organizations as they do things like theme experiences and harmonize impressions and eliminate negative cues, and just real practical stuff here, folks. All right, enough of that. All right, it's time for let's make sure everybody knows the website's right there. I've put it up, right, Strategic Horizons. Let's go there. If you want to go to if you're in the world of email, explore at strategichorizons.com. Send them an email and learn more. But I start at the website. That's the place to go. So, all right, time for the lightning round. I warned you about this. And so here we go. Let's. These are just kind of fast responses, nothing deep and thoughtful, and these should be something slightly more relevant to you. How about Bud Pine, electrical engineer?
Right. So that's actually my father, who was in the computer industry in the late 50s. That's how I got into computers in junior high school, actually elementary school in Palo Alto. We had a teletype in our house, if people remember what those are. So that's why I got into the computer industry, and then eventually at IBM, and everything happened since then. And
he worked at ARPANET, or the kind of the precursor to the internet.
Yeah, right? The precursor to the internet. He worked on the ARPANET in the late 60s, and so one time I think he was one of the top 100, if not 20 or 50 programmers in the world, working for all the major manufacturers of computers, and eventually started his own software company.
So tell me about Delwood, Minnesota. Where the heck is Delwood, Minnesota?
Until my wife and I moved back to Minnesota in 1997 from Connecticut, whereas I moved out there with IBM, I had no idea where it was either. But it's on the northeast side of St. Paul. We discovered it. Beautiful area, and it's got 1,000 people and 3 businesses with buildings, right? 2 golf courses and an apple orchard. But as it turns out, 1 week from now, a year ago, we moved to Stillwater, Minnesota. So actually,
oh my gosh, I'm so behind in the news. I thought I had just,
I wanted to get my wife on a lake like she grew up with in northern Minnesota. So this is why this side of my face is always so well lit, because I got windows here where I can look out the lake at any time, and it's wonderful.
All right. Well, yeah. So for me, you said that it's a beautiful place, and having worked for Renewal by Andersen in Cottage Grove, I can tell you it is absolutely beautiful about 6 weeks a year. Let's go ahead and let's go to the next one. I think I'll do them in this order. Let's do Julie Pine.
Right. So Julie is my wife. She's my helpmeet. I wouldn't be able to get anything done without her, because basically I do my thing here in my home office and she does everything else, right? She's out there mowing the lawn. She's out there shoveling the snow not shoveling, but plowing the snow in the winter. She runs my errands and everything, so she allows me to be me. So
she's the one in the background with the fan and the grapes right now, right?
Exactly, right.
Exactly.
Right.
All right, 2 more, Rebecca and Elizabeth, then I'll be done.
All right, so those are my 2 daughters. Rebecca lives near us. My wife is with her this morning, helping her do some work at her house. She gave us a 20-month-old grandson named Luke, which is wonderful. And in December, we're going to have a granddaughter, which is great, with her and her wonderful husband, Ryan. And then Lizzie is the one that's most following in my footsteps. She got her degree in marketing and journalism. She joined a consumer insights company that I actually partnered with called Stone Mantle. Then she got her MBA at the University of Chicago and joined Accenture as a strategy consultant. And so now we can actually have conversations and talk about business and so forth. And then last year, somewhere around this time, she actually joined JP Morgan and is in their strategy office for them in Chicago.
So just to bring this full circle, I'm working with Stone Mantle and a project associated with Renewal by Andersen. So it's interesting to know. I didn't know that your footprints were all over that brand, but there you go.
Well, and then you're in Minnesota, you give me a call so we can get together.
I'll have to do that. And then as it relates to, the purpose and joy that you've just shared around Luke and Lizzie and Rebecca and Julie, it's pretty clear that book about meaning and transformation is going to be really a good one for you soon, and all of us need it. Joe Pine, thank you for changing and transforming my world, transforming the way all of us look at human experiences. I do pray that people will take the time to spend on your website, get to know your work if they don't already. If you want to talk about Luddites, if you don't already know his work, you probably get that category. But short of that, please just invest in the full scope of work and the career arc of Joe Pine and what he can bring to your organization. Thanks, Joe. That's all for you, I guess. Take care. Yeah, and then I'll just, for those of you, I've got so many nice comments too from people. Denise Mosley Williams, wonderful, thanks. Just lots of good stuff out there. So I want to thank everyone who.
That's Dennis, not Denise, but yes.
Oh, it's Dennis. No, it's absolutely Dennis. Let's make sure. It looks like Dennis, doesn't it?
That's definitely Dennis.
Yeah, when you're reading it on the quick margin, it doesn't quite look that way. Dennis, I am so sorry. I think it's inauthentic to call you by the wrong name. All right, enough of that. Joseph Michelli here. We're going to call it. Hey, I feel so bad about not being around, but it really has been a kind of crazy time. And we're going to be hit and miss. You know, we've got Chip Conley, I know, scheduled for a future date and time, and a lot of really great guests. We move people as much as we can, but you know, we're keeping some of our greatest and best shows, even if my schedule is a little bit maddening right now. But thank you all. We'll catch you on the rebound. Dennis says it's all good. I'm a fan. Yeah, he was. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And we'll catch you in the next available slot for the live stream.